So I like to start these things off with a game called Count the Nines. I'm going to give you guys a couple of minutes to, well, not a couple of minutes, but a few seconds to look this over and go ahead and count the nines. Try and figure out how many nines are on your screen. And then we're going to change the game just a little bit. Change one thing. Now, count the nines. I'll give you guys a second to think about it. How many nines are on your screen? Most of you have probably figured out by now there are 10 nines. This was a lot easier than the previous version of the game, and you're probably a lot more likely to get the correct answer. So what changed? Why is it easier this time? We added a visual element. We did something very simple. We colored the nines red. And all of a sudden, it's much faster for you to make a decision, and you're much more likely to make the correct decision about how many nines there are. So what is visual analytics? So I got a great quote here that I love. Visual analytics is the representation and presentation of data that exploits our visual perception abilities in order to amplify cognition. And that's a really fancy way of saying what you guys just experienced with the Count the Nines game. When we add a visual element to data, all of a sudden the human brain works better. It works better with the data. All right, let's look at another example. We've got some data here. Let's say we've got 4 sets of data, 1, 2, 3, 4. And each of them have 11 sets of x, y coordinates. So for the purposes of this exercise, we're going to assume that x is maybe in millions, the net sales of a retail store, and y is the profit in millions. And you've got maybe 4 different stores here. Let's say they're different regional stores. And let's say you're a manager responsible for maximizing the profit at these stores. So what's your move? What do you do? All right, so you guys are probably thinking, you know what, I'd have a lot more information than that when I was trying to make this decision. You know, you might have the means or the variances of the data. You might have correlations or linear regressions. So let's give you that. Let's give you that information. So it turns out that the means and the variances for x and y are actually identical across these data sets. The correlations are identical. The linear regression line is identical. So you don't know much more from getting that statistical data. Let's look at the data one more way. So these are the same 4 data sets plotted visually with the trend lines. And so now you can start thinking a lot more clearly about what you're going to do as a manager in this situation. For instance, you know, we might want to ask this manager right here what they're doing differently to be such an outlier. Over at this store, we might want to look at these lower points down here and try to understand why they are underperforming their peers in terms of profit. We all of a sudden have a lot more information when we see this data plotted visually. And for those of you wondering, this data set, it's called Anscombe's Quartet. I have a lot of people who are like, where did you get that data set? I've been trying to come up with a data set like that. You can find it on Wikipedia or Google or anywhere else. So let's talk a little bit more about human perception and cognition. We're going to play one more little game here. I want you guys to think about which product subcategory is losing the most money. Which product subcategory is losing the most money? And we're going to, just to point out here, we've got data from, let's say, an office supply store. We've got the category information, subcategory, and then you've got the customer segments. So we've got this data. This looks a lot like Excel. Let's add a visual element to it. All right, so now when we've got negative profit, it's red. So again, we want to be thinking about which product subcategory is losing the most money. And from this, you know, you scan it and you can kind of figure out, okay, it looks like tables, but which product subcategories are doing the best? Which customer segments are doing the best? It takes a lot of time to try and make those decisions when you're looking at the data like this. So let's look at it one more way. And when we have the data here as bar charts, again, it becomes a lot easier to spot trends and outliers. Again, we can clearly see that tables are our least profitable category. We can kind of eyeball here that binders and binder accessories are doing pretty well for us, and that the corporate segment really stands out for us in terms of profitability. And we can do all this at a glance. You know, when you were looking at the data this way, you had to scan. You really had to make sure you checked each number. When you're looking at it this way, you can make split-second decisions. You don't have to look at all of the data linearly. So why is that? It's because of something called pre-attentive visual attributes. These are the pre-attentive visual attributes. And pre-attentive visual attributes are information that humans can process without really using any cognitive processes. We can do it almost subconsciously, instantaneously. And it's one thing to kind of explain that, but I have a great video that allows you to really experience the power of pre-attentive visual attributes for yourself.
This video will demonstrate a number of pre-attentive features, tasks, and visual interference which can occur in the low-level human visual system. To begin, consider a simple target detection task. Try to determine whether a target red circle is present or absent in a sea of blue circles. Apart from viewers who are red-blue colorblind, the target is easily identified as present or absent in each display. Notice that increasing the number of elements and decreasing exposure duration does not make identification more difficult. Pre-attentive tasks are rapid, accurate, and independent of display size.
So I want to start out by kind of walking through the three key types of data. There's two types of qualitative data and one type of quantitative data. So qualitative data is essentially categorical data, and that can be broken up into nominal data. And these are categories that are essentially, they're related to each other but not ranked in any way. So you've got states like Arizona, New York, Texas, names, Sarah, John, Maria, and types of beer. And then you also have qualitative data that's ordinal. And by that we mean that the categories have a relationship to one another. They can be ranked. So for instance, gold, silver, bronze. For survey data, things like excellent, good, poor, love it, like it, hate it. We know that one is better than the other, but we don't necessarily know by how much. You can't subtract like it from love it and get an answer. And then you have quantitative data, and that's the kind of data you would do math with. If you'd use it in an equation, it's quantitative data. In the Tableau product, we call the qualitative pieces dimensions, and we call the quantitative pieces measures. So how do humans like to see their data? How do they expect their data to be visualized? We break it up here into these three different types of data, and you'll see that across the board, the human visual system prefers data on position. So when I say position, I'm talking about things like, say, an XY scatter plot, where the points are in the visual canvas. And then it starts to break up a little bit after that. You'll see that after that, we're looking for quantitative data. You're looking for length, and that's something like a bar chart. For ordinal data, you're expecting the data to be on size, and for categorical data, you're looking for it to be on shape. And in fact, in general, the human visual system considers position data to be the most important, and that's whether you're looking at a data dashboard or walking into a new room. Your brain is scanning first for position, then for color, then for size, and then for shape. And so what this means is that as you're building data visualizations, you really want to make sure that the most important piece of information you're trying to convey is on position. And then you're looking at using color, size, and shape. But you'd want to really think hard before putting the key piece of information on something like shape.